It's all for one and one for all. We die for our brothers. That's how we ball. This is Mark Bell from SuperTraining.tv, Super Training Gym, the strongest gym in the West, answering more questions today for the Power Project, brought to you by HowMuchBench.net, The Slingshot, and the only strength magazine in the world, ThePowerMagazine.com. We got a bunch of freaking questions to get to today. I asked a question off of Facebook if anyone had any questions for the Power Project, and there was a bunch of them. So let's get to it. We have question number one is, how do you lift with a bum wrist? I refer to bum wrist as gay wrist, or anyway, or alternative lifestyle wrist, perhaps. What you're going to want to do with a bum wrist is to try to distract the joint a little bit. Get a little distraction going, get a little ADD going for your wrist. My favorite thing to do is to take a band, a light band, or a mini band, but usually a light band is going to be about the strength you're looking for, or maybe even something stronger depending on how bad your wrist is. There's a couple different things you want to do from a couple different angles, but basically the gist of it is that when you wrap a band around your wrist, it almost always shoots off your hand. No matter how you try to wrap it, you try to wrap it through your hand, around your wrist, around your forearms. Just none of this shit ever really works. So what I do is I take my wrist wraps and I put the band around my wrist. There's a video of it. I posted it up somewhere. I'm sure you can search for it and probably find it. Anyway, what you're going to want to do is take the band and wrap it around your wrist, then take the wrist wrap and wrap the wrist wrap tightly, securely around the band. This is going to allow you to stretch much harder, much more betterist than normal. You're going to be able to distract the joint more. You're going to be able to kind of open up some of those little bones and ligaments and tendons in there that are getting crushed every time you try to handle a heavy bench press. They also sometimes get killed when you're doing a squat, when your hands are back. So when you're doing a squat, make sure you're wearing wrist wraps. When you're doing a bench press, make sure you're wearing wrist wraps. For those of you who have wrist problems, chronic wrist problems, make sure that you're training your wrists. Make sure you're training your forearms. A lot of times there's tightness going on in the forearms. There's a bunch of mutants going on in there, and you need to address that as well. You need to get rid of some of those gnomes and have some of that soft tissue manipulated so that your forearms aren't kind of pulling on your wrists all the time. Other than that, other than wearing a wrist wrap and other than trying to distract the joint and stretch it and get it to open up, I don't have a whole lot of other advice for you other than to simply just try to warm up your wrist. Don't take this too far and don't take it the wrong way. But warm up your wrist before you start your training session. So that could just be with small exercises such as opening up your hand. I know that as of late, I've heard a lot of people talking about opening up the hand being effective against elbow pain and wrist pain, because everything we do is always in here, all crunchiness going on in there. So those are some options that you have, and let's move on to the next question. The next question is about deadlift and squat. Deadlift and squat has gone to shit. I'm 220 pounds, but when I was 240, I was lifting some heavy shit, doing pretty good. I'm about 5'8", so I'm short as fuck. 5'8" isn't too short, but it is short. When your body weight goes down, your strength is going to go down a little bit. So you have to create some new challenges for yourself, this new body weight. Allow yourself to build your strength up and not so much test it. Forget about the weights for a minute. Try to trick yourself a little bit. Use some bands, use some chains, use some straight weight, use some different barbells. Throw some curveballs at yourself, but also every once in a while, throw yourself an underhand pitch that you can hit out of the freaking park, so that you can feel good about yourself and feel good about your training, whether that's a reverse band squat, a high box squat, whatever type of squat it is for you. For me, it's a cambered bar squat. I can kill that thing, especially as my strength starts to come back. I can kill that bar because it doesn't kind of show the lack of mobility in my upper body as the straight bar does. So try to throw yourself some different things, throw some different things at yourself that allow you to again, allow you to build your strength, allow you to underload things that are going to make the lifts harder. But then every once in a while, too, to feel good, do some feel-good lifts, such as a reverse band, a slingshot, those types of things. For the squat and deadlift, reverse band work is very good. Also throwing on some gear can be effective. Do not miss any lifts. Whenever you're in a rut, do not miss any lifts. If you feel like you're being a puss and you're not going for that extra attempt, it's okay. All that stuff will come back eventually. Also, are you training too heavy too often? The cream of the crop, the best guys in the business, normally, only pull heavy about once or twice a month. Once or twice a month for a heavy deadlift. Anything more than that, not only can it compromise your deadlift, but it can also compromise your squat. So those are some things to think about. Let's move on to the next question. This one is, how awesome is it being jacked and tan? It's freaking great, and I plan to get a whole lot more jacked and a whole lot more tan coming up, so stay tuned for that. I got a meet to do, so I'm going to blow up as big as I can as soon as I weigh in. I'm going to try to get myself over 265. I'm competing at 242. Try to get myself fat as all hell, and I'm going to try to bench press upwards of 550 pounds. We shall see. Talking about it's not good enough. I'm going to have to go out there and actually do it on the platform, right? So let's see what else we got. How can you implement strongman training into a powerlifting routine? Very, very easily. On, let's say, a deadlift day. Do your normal deadlifting, maybe do one assistance exercise, and then bam, go into your strongman event. If it's like a farmer's walk or something like that, that's, as you mentioned here, that's perfect. That goes along great with your deadlift training. You'll be zapping your grip and destroying your grip all in one day, so that'll be very effective. If you want to take strongman much further than that, then you will have to have a separate day where you do strongman events. That, again, the cream of the crop. Most guys that do strongman, they do a lot of training in the gym. They do about one day per week where they work on event training. If you want to know more about how to train for strongman competitions, ask a strongman athlete. I am not a strongman competitor. You're just simply asking how to implement it into powerlifting. So I'm giving my advice here. But another great guy to consult when it comes to talking about strongman training is my boy, Mike Jenkins. He's a wealth of knowledge there, so don't be afraid to hit him up. He will get back to you, I know that. Brad Sakana wants to know, what's the best way to make sure that your spray tan doesn't get blotchy on the day of the show? I am familiar with spray tan, but as far as a show goes, I'm not really sure what kind of show he's talking about. But with the spray tan, I think the key with the spray tan is to spray it on ever so gently and to get on about 2 or 3 layers of it. You also need, you're going to need some Melanotan, which is the injectable form of tanning, the new wave of tanning. You don't no longer have to lay down in a tanning bed. And so that can be effective. But I would say the most effective thing that you can do is you're going to need to have somebody with a very steady hand who's really working that tanning spray, because you can't just spray it. You can't just spray it because it'll leak everywhere. So you need to have somebody kind of paintbrush it on a little bit. And the guy that's going to be probably the best for that, out of all the people I can think of, the most delicate touch would probably go to my boy Jesse Burdick. So hit him up next time you do a competition, next time you need to glute stand up, he's going to be your guy to go to. Next question here comes from Tim Fu, and he wants to know about should a shot putter, Tim trains a lot of throwers, should a shot putter do snatches or deadlifts? Matt Vincent comes in and chimes in and says, and he helps answer the question. Matt Vincent, by the way, it just so happens to be the world's bestest Highland Games guy that there is. He's the best guy in the sport, so he knows a little something about something. He knows a little something about throwing some heavy objects around. So he is more qualified than myself to answer this question. But I do agree with him. He says he'd rather see snatches in season and maybe some deadlifting kind of more in the off season. One thing to realize about snatches, something I've realized with them, is that while the debate between power lifters and Olympic lifters goes back and forth, I'll say this first about coaching before I mention the next thing. Coach what you're good at and stick to that. Tim, my friend, you are fantastic with the Olympic lifts. I've seen you teach them. I've seen you come over to my gym and show. although you're a little bit chubby yourself to get into the perfect positions, you know what you're talking about. You're talking about coaching them. So coach what you feel you are coach your strong points, and don't go too far outside of those. I see too many coaches doing that. The great debate between powerlifters talking about, whether snatches are effective and this and that. Just realize this. When you do a snatch, you're going to use a very, very light amount of weight. No matter how freaking strong you are, you're going to use weights that aren't that heavy because of the skill and the mobility and all the other things, all the other dynamics that go into doing a snatch does not allow you to handle massive weights such as a deadlift. So I'd use a deadlift to kind of overload, and I'd use a snatch as kind of more of an underloading type movement, although they are extremely demanding on the body. I'm not saying that. But you kind of get my point that in one lift you might be handling 300, and the other lift you might be handling, in the case of the deadlift, might be handling something more like 600. So those are some things to consider. Keep this in mind as well. Whenever you find an athlete that can actually perform a snatch, whenever somebody can just grab a hold of a barbell and perform a snatch, they're probably going to have a higher upside than the guy that can't. Then all the guy can do is squat, bench, or deadlift. The guy can't snatch, the guy can't jump, the guy can't do this, the guy can't do that. Because the snatch, a lot of times, in many cases, is a little bit of a test of strength, mobility, speed, and all those things. And I'm not just talking about being able to get underneath the bar and do a snatch with like hardly any weight. I'm talking about somebody who's proficient at it, somebody who's good at it. So those are some things to consider. A lot of times, the higher the level of the athlete, the higher the ceiling is going to be for that athlete to continue to get better. If they can't perform a snatch, if they are unathletic, odds are their ceiling is going to be lowered, and it will be more difficult for them to be a great athlete in any sport, whether it be powerlifting, weightlifting, shot put, discus, whatever. So a lot of times, something like the snatch is a great indicator of a solid athlete. I think that's about it on the questions, and strength is never a weakness, and that is it from supertraining.tv.